Welcome to Social Media Marketing. My name is Tara Burton, and today we're with Jules Kaden Black of internet fame.
What an intro.
I know. Well, I mean, you're famous to me and, hundreds of thousands of people that follow you now. But the reason we really love Jules is she is a KSU owl, and which means she's an alumni, which we love. And were you a marketing major?
I was.
Okay, good. I'd hate to say you were some other departments.
Nope.
Gonna
Marketing.
claim
And I never changed. I never wavered. Came in marketing, left marketing.
you did better than I did. I was originally a music education major.
That is not surprising to me somehow.
And I found out how many music teachers there were and decided that marketing was better.
Yeah.
Still in education though, so. But what we want to talk to Jules today about is about being an influencer because she certainly is, particularly if you find her on Instagram or on TikTok, and she has a pretty big following on Facebook as well. But that isn't exactly how she started. It your life's goal to be an influencer?
No. Definitely not.
So how did you get here? How did this all start?
So, full transparency, because that is the name of the game for me. I
Yep.
struggled really heavily out of college once I graduated, finding a marketing job. And I wanted something pretty specific, and I wasn't qualified for any of those very specific things that I wanted. So I ended up doing what a lot of post grad people do, and that is just taking the first offer that came my way that was some stability so that I could, pay my bills. And I was
Good.
extremely unhappy.
Oh,
So yeah, so I was pretty unhappy, and I was in this really weird, just not happy place. And I have always been a pretty transparent person. That, I will say, is a skill that I've had always. There's just, to me, like, holding things in or keeping things private, like, it doesn't really ever make me feel good to do that. And I find that when I can speak my truth of how I'm really feeling,
wow.
so many other people relate. And so just on my own private social media, as I was talking about how I was unhappy and how I didn't want to do that anymore and how I was going to embrace this change of personal development and just finding my happiness. And I just started talking more about the journey, and I started posting pictures of myself, like my whole self, which I was really uncomfortable to do for a long time. And I just kind of embraced who I am, and people kind of just started coming in. And that was in the era of Instagram. That was when Instagram was, it was easy to get, I don't want to say it was easy. It wasn't easy to get a lot of followers, but today it's a
It's
lot harder to get a single Instagram follower than it was at that point.
Yeah, the organic
So
reach was so different. And
very,
give us
very
a
different.
frame of when this was happening.
This was probably 2018.
Okay. So we're
Yeah,
talking 5 years ago, and the feed was definitely different 5 years ago.
very, very different. It was, I mean, Vine had came and gone. There was
Right.
no, like, video app at that time. It was just Instagram for our generation, for Gen Xers who were a little bit more with the times and were off of Facebook. Because I find that Gen X is an interesting kind of place where they either are living on Facebook or they're into Instagram and some TikTok as well. But yeah, it was just a different time then. I feel like everything's completely changed. But the one thing that hasn't changed is just that my transparency and my openness. And I feel like there's a really big space for that always, especially in 2023. The consumers are responding so much more to authenticity and transparency now more than ever.
I think that authentic self is so important when we start talking about influencers. They're looking for people who are authentic, who are showing us who they are. And I think it's a huge leap for you to have done that. So,
Yeah.
did you end up leaving the job that you were hating?
So I left the job I was hating, and I ended up going to not do social media. I would just switch jobs to do, I was doing senior living placement, which was near and dear to my heart. My dad was ill and was in assisted living. And so that's kind of how I fell into that. But with that came a not toxic work environment. And with that came more freedom in my schedule to actually be able to explore my own creative hobbies. And part of that for me was clothes and sharing that online and just sharing like my day to day. My day to day was a little bit more interesting. I will say that. Like it wasn't, it wasn't just like going into the office and sitting at a desk in front of the computer all day for sometimes like at my old job, it would be like 12-hour days. So I was on the road, like my office was my car and I was constantly, doing stuff. And so it made it easier for me to be able to pick my phone up and make a video or, just have every day was different. So it was easier to kind of
to create
have
content.
that engagement with people.
So now you've moved on from there, and I think now you've kind of embraced this idea of you as an influencer. So how has that transition happened?
Sorry. I know you were trying to get to there and I was just like,
It's all good. We're
going around. So I was in the senior living job for a while and I ended up gaining this TikTok 2020 pandemic hit. And everybody it was previously Musically, and I had been on there because I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and they were, like, on Musically, and I wanted to see what they were doing, so I had an account, and then once the pandemic hit, myself, like, hundreds of thousands of people my age, which I'm 28, started joining TikTok. And so I'm joining TikTok and I'm making like funny little videos of my dogs. Like you can put it in a bun. Like that was like probably one of my first videos on there. And I was just like embracing the trends, embracing the fun part of it. But then I was like, what if I like use this platform to kind of share my story? And my story was that I had lost a lot of weight and I'd been on a journey and I'd struggled and do still struggle. And I wanted to share that part of my life. And I wanted to share my clothes and start doing some like outfit inspiration videos. And then that's when things really like took off. So I started gaining a lot of followers and I was like, this is crazy. Like people actually like are following me. Like they think I'm cool enough to like press the follow button on. And before I knew it, I probably was at just over 100,000 followers.
and that's on
And I had decided to make a company. So initially, it wasn't the leap right into full-time content. It was a leap into starting my own business through basically funneling my followers into customers.
right.
So that's kind of how I decided to leave my job in the first place. It wasn't initially just to do content. It was, I'm going to start this business. I was kind of doing some coaching and
Sure.
really I was creating a place for other people to do their professional services. And I was just like
Just
doing,
bringing
I was
everybody
for
there.
them, right? So I was just kind of inspiring people along the way. I am a certified life coach. I did that, got my certification, but more or less I was just there for like moral support and I was the CEO of the company and I had, a trainer that came in and nutritionist and things like that. So that is kind of where it started. And then I decided to close the door on that chapter and I was like, what am I going to do now? Like this is like I guess I'm going to have to go get a job again like and then I was like, hold on. I have now at this point maybe 250,000 followers on TikTok. I've got a good amount on Instagram, on 2 different Instagram pages, and I'm monetizing 0% of that.
0. Yep.
0.
Well,
So
originally you were funneling them to your program, which is a way to monetize it, but if you're gonna
true.
be an influencer, you've gotta have some way to monetize it.
Exactly. So I wasn't doing any brand partnerships. I did, I had a like to know it set up. I had some of those like, I think I was at that point on the Amazon affiliate program, but I was not taking any of it seriously. So I had this window of opportunity and that's when I was like, okay, I mean, what better time to jump ship and try to do this than now? I have no job anyway. So let's just see where this goes. So that was actually not that long ago. That was last January 2022.
So it's been a
So
year.
a year of full-time content creation. Yeah.
So in that year of full-time content creation, have you been able to feed yourself with it?
I have, yeah, I actually have. I made more money last year than I made in that first job out of college.
That's
So,
fantastic.
I call it a win. I
No, that's
worked
a win. That's an absolute
a
win.
lot less. I had no toxic bosses. I had no, my work-life balance was wonderful. So yeah, it was a good year. I'm actually pretty proud of myself for how I did. And considering I, full transparency, don't feel like I put in as much effort as I could have, I'm really hopeful for what 2023 is going to bring, because I'm coming into 2023 with like a lot more knowledge and power and faith in myself
So
to do this.
So, quick question. Let's talk about how you've monetized real fast over
Mhm.
2022, and then I want to talk about your content creation. What are the ways that you have been able to create income as an influencer?
Okay, so the number one best form of income would be a brand partnership, like a formal brand partnership where it's not a gifting, it's not anything like that. It's a paid partnership. And there's different stipulations within that that actually, I think a lot of micro influencers don't realize that there's more opportunity to monetize. So there's kind of like three areas of monetization. There's your actual content, and whatever you're, so some of these brand partnerships, they don't even want you to post on your own channels. They just want you to make the content and send it to them so that they can use it. So there's the actual content creation slash actually posting to your page. Then there's usage, and that's for advertising. So that's giving them the rights to be able to use your video as an ad. And then the third would be exclusivity, which sometimes, like I have a contract right now, it's 2 days. I thought that was kind of silly. A lot of them will be for like 3-ish months. They don't want you to work with a XYZ brand that's within kind of what they're doing. And they compensate you for that, knowing this is how you put food on your table. And we're asking you not to work with any brands in this realm. So we're going to give you extra money to compensate for that. So those are the three forms. I would say the top, where you get your most money, 100% is going to be the actual content creation. Then right under that is going to be the usage. Um, I do want to talk about this for a second. I have I've had two separate occasions now where I created something for a brand and they used what I made for them as an advertisement without talking to me and giving me the opportunity to get compensated for that. One of them, both instances, I got notified by a follower actually who sent the ad to me and was like, "This is so cool, blah blah blah, like congratulations." And I was like,
Wait a minute, back that up.
yeah, so the one of them was a pretty bad situation. It involved getting a lawyer. They had actually taken a video I made for them, spliced it with other videos that I didn't make for them, and put words on it that were like basically trying to portray that I lost a lot of weight using their product, even though I hadn't, and actually used videos of me where I was thinner. I'd gained some weight, and then they reversed it. Yeah, so they made it look, it was really bad. I ended up getting paid $5,000 just for,
Damages.
like, basically just compensation for harming my name and for,
Yeah.
using something that was false. And it took a lot of, like, stern lawyer letters to get them to pay that out, but they did eventually pay me for that. And then the other one, I just sent them an invoice. I was like, "Oh, I see you went ahead and moved forward with usage, so here's my invoice," and they paid it. So that's best case scenario, but,
So it's really
don't
important to
forget,
look at those contracts when you get them as an influencer to see what you're giving them the rights to use it for and make sure that you're covering all those areas.
I there is never a contract that you should not read front to back. Like,
Oh, yeah.
read it twice, have somebody else look at it. Eventually, once you do it longer, you'll know kind of what to look for, what standard, and then you'll know, hey, I have a real problem with this. And sometimes they'll put usage in their contract without even talking to you about it. So you need to read the contract and say, hey, I see that you've put 3 months of usage in here. That's going to be 30% of the total cost of my video per month, which is, by the way, the standard of what you would charge for usage.
Oh, that's good to know. So
Yeah.
30% of whatever you charge for the initial video is what you would
Yep.
charge for the months that they're gonna have you under exclusivity
Per month.
per month.
No, that's for usage, not for exclusivity. Exclusivity
Okay.
is a little bit more gray. It just depends. I kind of just usually, this is probably not great, but there's no like golden standard for it. So I usually just throw a number out. Depends on what their ask is. If it's like a brand, like let's say, for instance, it's a clothing brand and they say, hey, you can't promote anything on Amazon for the next week. That's going to hurt me, right?
Oh,
Because
yeah,
I get a pretty good chunk of income from Amazon. So I'll charge a little bit more. You see what I'm saying? Whereas if it's
and
like, let's say a healthy food brand and they're like, you can't promote these protein bars, any protein. I'm like, okay, cool. I wasn't going to work with a protein bar company in the next week anyway. So yeah, it
that
just
makes a lot
depends.
of sense to look at how it's gonna impact the rest of your income.
Yes. So yeah, brand partnerships are definitely like huge. If you can get a few of those, once you start getting actual paid brand partnerships, that's where you're going to start getting some real traction on the amount of money you're making. Other than that, affiliate money is actually pretty big. It depends. Like some brands they pay pennies. Some of them they make it really hard, and you have to jump through hoops all to get like let's just say a $20 check, and it's like okay, well, I mean that's cool. I'm not saying I'll take $20. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying like in the scheme of things, $20 isn't really going to pay your bills. So it just depends. But I would say like Amazon and Like to Know It, at least in my niche, are probably the two biggest things that people rely on, that people are using.
So like to know
And
it is a place where you can have affiliate links to like the outfits that you use or products that you use.
yeah, and it's definitely not just outfits. So it doesn't even really, I would say, matter what kind of like niche you're in because they have, I mean, you could have home improvement
Right.
things and you can have, they have all types of brands on there. But yeah, so every brand has like a different amount assigned to it. So like places like Target, Amazon, they're going to have less of a commission. But then you have like a place like Abercrombie, and I'm just obviously using examples that I actually would link. So I'm sorry if this isn't resonating with some people that are like, oh, I'm a home improvement influencer. I want to be one. Um, but like,
Okay, it
let's
works
just
the
say,
same way. It's just you're using
right.
different things.
Right. And it'll actually show you the amount of commission, or it'll sometimes give you a range. Like it'll be like, depending on the product, like let's say accessories might be a lower commission than like a sweater. Right. So it'll have a range sometimes and it'll say like 7 to 10%. And the thing that you can remember about this is that it's not just on the single item that you're linking. And this is across the board pretty much with everything. It's going to be on the entire cart. So if somebody's spending $200 at Target, and I get, let's just say 10%, that's not bad, right? On
Oh,
one person's cart. So the holidays are a really big time for influencers because at least for affiliate commission, because people are shopping and they're spending more money than normal. So
well, and they're looking for
it's a really good way
solutions
to
to
cash in.
issues. They're looking for solutions. And a lot of
Yeah.
times we look to influencers for solutions, whether that's DIY or clothing or cooking or what have you. So definitely would be a huge time for that.
Yes. Yes, very much so. So, there also is the gifting thing, which anybody who's just starting out is gonna be doing gifting. You just are. That's kind of where you always start. And you're probably getting pretty excited a lot of times about the things that you can potentially get gifted. But I would say at this point in time, as of like today, I have almost 18,000 on one Instagram page, almost 20,000 on the other. I have over 300,000 on TikTok. So my response to gifted partnerships,
It's
unless it's Dyson Airwrap, they can send me a Dyson Airwrap. That's
well, if anybody's family works for Dyson, please let them know that Jules is
have them
available.
reach out. We'll work it out.
She does great hair videos. It'll all be awesome. So I know now you've kind of got a huge life change that happened for you and your husband. What are you doing right now that kind of impacts your influencer strategies?
Yes. So right now we are homeless. Okay, that was dramatic, but
Woo!
no, we are digital nomads. So if you're unfamiliar with what that is, we're basically both working remote, and we pick different cities for a month at a time, and we travel right now around the US. So that's been really fun and kind of like a cool opportunity to partner with other content creators that live in different cities and to partner with different brands that are based out of those cities, which I'll be honest, I've been a little bit not as on top of that as I should have been, but I have had some really wonderful partnerships with other content creators, which has been huge. And just, getting the unique opportunity of getting to do something like that just because we both we live in the era of flexible jobs in 2023, which is wonderful.
Well, and I think the unique thing about you guys is that you're not living out of a van. You're renting
No.
Airbnbs.
Yes, and that is the first question people ask me when we, like, mention this to them, "Oh, we're traveling." "Oh, van life?" No, no. You
I'm like,
must not follow me on social media because you would know that I could never do van life. So much respect to those who do, but
yeah.
I need air conditioning and a shower, and I have a lot of stuff. So, just seeing what we're bringing with us on this trip would probably make you cringe a little bit. We have a
It
lot
would
of
be
stuff.
mortifying. I think it's amazing. They have a truck and it's literally packed through.
Floor to ceiling. I posted a TikTok video recently, like, while we were on the road going from one place to the other, and that is when our truck is floor to ceiling packed. And so many of the comments were like, "I can't even focus on what you're talking about in this video because what's behind you is giving me anxiety." I'm like, "Trust." I know it's a lot. It's gives me anxiety to look at. But yeah, so it's floor to ceiling packed and we go from place to place. And it's been really cool because, if let's just say I'm in California right now, it's the dead of winter, but I'm emailing swimsuit brands. "Hey, I'm in sunny California. Let's work together. Let's create some content together." So,
So
that kind of
that's
leads me into that. But yeah, I do a lot of brand reach outs.
I was going to say,
My
you so you not only wait for brands to reach out to you, you're proactive and reach out to them.
Yes, yes. And you'll find like, let's say, you want to be a social media manager, you will find that a lot of times your company may contract out agencies to help you find the right people. I would say, I'm thinking probably 80% of like my really big deals that I do with like bigger companies are through agencies.
Oh,
So I'm not
awesome.
actually working with the brands themselves,
You're going with
um,
the
which is
agency,
kind of
but
interesting. Yeah. So they're the middleman between both of us. And just like anything, you I do a lot of negotiating. I never accept the first offer. I always just see what they'd be willing to do.
you know, push a little because they're probably lowballing you to begin with. So it's always good to come back with a different ask, but a reasonable ask, I think, is always the
Yes.
key there. So
Yes.
as you've been traveling, how have you been able to keep it fresh in terms of creating content? Because when you create a piece of why don't you talk to people about how much goes into creating a piece of content? Because I think a lot of people have this concept that being an influencer is really easy and that you just record the video and you post it. And actually, life is much different than that. So, could you speak
Yeah.
about that for us?
So don't get me wrong. I, okay. I personally get a lot of videos on like TikTok of influencers getting really offended that people are saying their job is easy and they're like, "My job is so hard," and this and that. I'm not saying that it's not hard, but I will say with 100% certainty, this is the most fun, easy, come naturally to me job that I've ever had. So I want to preface it with that. Is
Okay.
it 100% easy? Absolutely not. Um, are there days where I pick my phone up and make a video and, specifically like on Instagram stories, right? Like I'm going to pick my phone up and talk to it. Unfortunately for me, I'm not comfortable enough to use TikTok the way I use Instagram. And that's just like a personal thing.
Okay.
Um, and we can talk about it. But yeah, so when it comes to actual content planning, there's a lot that goes into it. There's a bunch of criteria that a lot of these apps use. And it's kind of like the same across all the apps of like your video quality and your lighting and like these little things that play a factor into how well your video does. So that's been a little bit challenging while traveling because it's not all luxury around here. Like, we're very normal people. Like, we're not rich. We're not like nothing crazy. So, like, not every Airbnb we're staying at is the Ritz Carlton, right? Like, what you're seeing behind me, this is probably the nicest Airbnb we've had in a while. Like, I have a window. You know what I mean? Like, I
Good
don't
for
always.
you.
So that makes it a little bit challenging, and I do utilize, like, space rentals to do content, but when I'm spending the money like that to rent a space to make content, I better walk out of there having at least the content ready to make 15 to 20 videos. And
And
that's just in a.
you rented a hotel room recently, didn't you?
I did, so I can tell you about that because that's actually a really good example. Okay. So recently I did a whole shoot. It was like very involved. I had ordered hangers and clothing bags, and I individually planned every outfit. I had 20 different clothing bags of outfits.
Oh, wow.
Okay. You should have seen their face when I walked into this hotel. They were like, "Oh, you're the girl doing the photo shoot." I was like, "Yeah, I know." So the I had a spreadsheet that had, like, kind of a keyword, like, video name. I had the idea. It had, an example video, like, that would either have the sound or kind of, like, what I wanted to do with that video. The caption was written out, the text on the screen was written out, and it was all there, and I had, like, probably 25 lines, and I had actually hired a girl that I found through my network online to come and help me that day so that she could, it goes a lot faster when you even just have somebody to stand there and press start and stop, or someone that can start getting the next outfit ready for you as you're unchanging out of the one that you have on. It was
Yeah.
a very, very involved. I was so stressed. I paid $750. We were in Austin. Apparently Austin's not cheap because that was the lowest rate that I could find. I was basically going back and forth. How much would it be to do a hotel room versus how much to do an Airbnb versus how much to do like an actual studio rental? And we
Gotcha.
came to the conclusion that the hotel would be the best option. So I have invested $750 in the hotel. I've invested $250 plus her parking, plus lunch, breakfast, coffee. I mean, it was a long day.
Right. So you gotta
Um,
yourselves. So
I have had to buy all of the outfits, the bags, the everything. I'm a lot of money into this project and I'm freaking out, right? Because it's just me. I don't have a boss or anybody that I can bounce these ideas off of. Like, and then I started thinking, am I going to get my money back for this
right.
photo shoot? I was like, is it possible for me on one day of shooting to be able to gain enough traction out of these videos to make up for the fact that I'm spending over $1,000 on this photo shoot? I didn't know. And I was like, well, let's just experiment. Let's see what happens. I gained from the time of that photo shoot, from the time I started posting the content, I gained probably right now, I'm still posting some of the content from that.
Right.
Right now, I think I've gained 35,000 or 45, between 35 and 45,000 followers on
That's
TikTok just from those videos, which, by the way, TikTok just updated and it'll actually show you how many followers you're getting from specific videos. Really
that's fabulous.
cool. Great update.
That was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yes. So probably between 35 and 45,000 followers, which you have to assign a monetary value to.
Right.
I ended up doing so well on my Amazon that I qualified for a bonus that they did. So I got an
Yeah.
extra $2,000 because I sold so much that month on top
That's
of my commission
right.
that I was already getting. Yeah. And then just, you get paid for the views. You get paid for the views on
Right.
TikTok and on Instagram. And I
Right.
I probably got a TikTok pays terrible, but I probably did get like right around $100 and from all the views on TikTok, and then probably same for Instagram.
So at least it
So
helps defray the cost some. But you
yeah,
definitely made your money back.
very much so. And it was so much work. I mean, I probably had 3 weeks of planning before, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it was, trust me,
Yeah.
it was a lot. Because it was day in and day out. And then it was just a lot of like manual labor as well. So yeah, a lot went into that. It wasn't just a day. It was X amount of weeks of work, but it paid for itself. And so that's just an example of when you can be really organized. And then, same thing when you're shooting for brand, content for a brand, they have a lot of requirements. You can't have certain things in the background and your fingernails have to look a certain way and,
Yeah.
just XYZ. So there's a lot of like very small details that I think the average person doesn't realize that goes into it. On top of the easy, I'm eating this. Look, those are
Right.
the easy.
Yeah, the keeping that filling, I call that filler content, between your
Yes,
your pieces of content. And,
yes,
I think also having to keep up with trends, because that's important with influencers, is to understand what not only the conversation that's going on, but what are the music that's going on, the type of video that's happening, as
very
well
much,
as organic
very much
feeds
so.
and how they're doing.
Yeah, and
So
it's hard because if you don't post something in enough, like, there was a lot of content that I do try to keep a content schedule going. I do spend research hours on TikTok scrolling and saving sounds or saving trends. But if I don't have the time to like get together and film it and post it and the time, then you're not going to post a trend that,
you gotta do it
it's over.
then.
The ship sailed. Yeah, if you don't do it in time. So yeah, 100%, absolutely. And then the editing too. The editing is really meticulous. It's very tedious. It takes a long time to edit. Like, I hope you guys really appreciate when you're watching a video that a creator makes and you see just like different frames every third of a second and all this text coming and go. Like, that takes so long to do.
Well,
Very
and to
long.
do it well. I mean, and to place the text in the right place. That's the thing I think drives me crazy, is when people don't think about where does that text need to be where it's actually readable.
Yeah, and it takes practice because sometimes even still, like, I mess it up, But I will say, new feature on TikTok too, you can hit clear mode. And if you can't read the text on a screen, you can like hold it down, where it gives you the options to save it, to
Yeah.
share it, or not interested. It has clear mode now. So you can click that and it takes all the caption and the side stuff away so you can see the text.
Because so much, particularly on TikTok, so much of the screen is taken up by their stuff.
Yes.
And it's like,
Yes.
I want to see the video, not your stuff at the bottom. So,
Yes.
well,
And
that's a
like
hot tip that
truly,
I did not know. So good.
yeah, and like the new thing on TikTok now is TikTok starting into Instagram. Like TikTok is really like promoting carousels and like wants you to post
Oh,
pictures and like it's like, "Oh my gosh, can we just stop doing this because us creators, we can't keep up. We don't know what to do." And obviously Instagram, they want you to post reels, so
it's,
we're just
yeah.
trying to survive out here.
Well, I often think of TikTok as where I go to get entertainment.
Yeah.
Whereas on Instagram, I'm actually still communicating with people. I don't really communicate with the people very much on TikTok.
No, no.
I'm more
But
for
I
your
will say, like, as a creator, also have to dedicate time to watching other people's videos and interacting
yes,
with it. And like, I can comment. This happens, I think, when you have like a certain amount of followers. Like, I could comment the stupidest comment on somebody's videos and it'll end up getting 300 likes. I think just because it shows up higher for
right?
some reason because I have the followers. So like that's a great way for people to be like, who's this girl? Like, let me click her, let me follow, So you have to spend time doing that too. Um,
That
there
works
was
on
something
Instagram too, by the way.
I don't do as good of a job on Instagram with it, but
But it
oh
works on both of them. That kind of figuring out where the communities are.
yes. And what I was going to say is TikTok's a really interesting place. And I want to mention this just because this is your social media class. I just saw a TikTok pointing this out the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could reshare this to everything because it's so true. Gen Z, so probably the generation of most of the people watching this video right now, us talking, is the way that they want their marketing is so much different than other generations. So it's like they don't want you to like show the product. Like they would rather you run over the product and like do a funny video. Like the accounts that do really well, like, Tyra, have you seen Duolingo's TikTok
Yes,
and,
yes.
um, who's it? Scrub Daddy? They do a really good job of market like, but
Scrub
the
Daddy is
Scrub
hilarious.
Daddy's TikTok is completely different than their Instagram and their website. Like, they don't market like that across the board. They're changing the way that they're marketing based on the platform that they're on. So smart.
Well, and I often talk about Wendy's does that as well. So if you look at Wendy on Twitter, she's sassy as can be, but on Facebook, she's like, "No families are here. I'll be nice."
Exactly. I
And
think that it's one of the smartest ways of marketing, though, is like, I think the brands that are getting a lot of attention and traction, or the videos that do really well, are doing it in this very unique, almost borderline, like, is this legal way of of marketing.
well, and you have to be like Chick-fil-A tried to be sassy over on Twitter and it did not work. So it has to fit your brand personality. That's the main goal. Like Scrub Daddy, they can be kind of how they are on TikTok is they're hilarious. But
Raunchy.
raunchy, but it fits, it's okay. It's like
Yeah.
Netflix and their Twitter account. Oh my gosh.
Are
Um,
they funny on there? I'm not on Twitter. That's my,
they
like,
ha
one place I
I
can't.
only go to Twitter very infrequently, but if I go there, Netflix and believe it or not, Steakums. Steakums is amazing. Go check them out on Twitter.
Okay.
They're just not all what you think they would be. They get very political. Like Steakums is like completely political. It's something you just totally don't expect. But they know
Which
their
you have to
audience.
be really careful with too, like, it takes a really, like, oh,
Yeah, as an influencer, you really have to decide like what your lines are. There's a lady that I follow, and every time she talks about her lifestyle, her sexuality, she loses followers. And she talks even
that's
when
what
she
I
does
say.
it. Hmm?
Hi. Because that's the thing I've kind of had to, like, realize because y listen, we can't have this conversation without at least mentioning this. The trolls on the internet, like, social media as a career is not for the faint of heart. Like,
Yes.
people are so mean. Like, they are mean. The other day, I had somebody send me a message that was not intended for me. They were trying to talk bad about me to someone. Listen, this has happened to most of us at some point before. Like, I did it one time with babysitting. I was like, they don't have food in this house, and I accidentally texted it to her. So they did that with me. They were trying to talk bad about me and sent it to me. And that, man, that hurt. Like, I was sad. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, it was really not good. But then, then you have, like, this is the way I view things. TikTok, people don't elect to see your content. They're going to see your content whether they follow you or not, right? So you're more susceptible to getting hate on that app because they didn't ask to see your video. And so they can just decide they don't like you. And a lot of times, unfortunately, they feel the need to tell you that. Whereas like Instagram, I do get significantly less hate because people are electing to be there. If they're seeing my content, more than likely they've clicked follow and they're seeing my content that way. I mean, of course, there is like the discover page or whatever they call it now, but more than likely they've asked to be there on Instagram. But yeah, people are ruthless on the internet. So you got to
Oh,
kind of account for that. And
so
a lot of my,
unfortunately, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, a lot of my, other fellow creators, they have a zero tolerance. It's a block.
Yeah, no, I would have to as well. So, well, Jules, I hate to say that our time is coming to an end, but it is. You've been so wonderful to hang with us this time, and I hope that you guys learned a little bit more about what goes into being an influencer. And would you like to give your parting thought or parting
My
piece of
parting
advice?
thought, just hang tight because like I just said, social media, it's really tough, but it's also very rewarding. So it's just kind of one of those things that you just gotta ride the wave of the good days and the things going viral. And then you gotta just also ride the wave of things that you worked really hard on, maybe not performing the way that you wanted them to. It just comes with the territory and there's no real explanation for it. So
Just gotta go with the flow some days. So make sure that
unfortunately,
you check Jules out on Instagram or over on TikTok, and I'll give you guys some links to it. And she also has a video that she did the day in the life of an influencer that you posted over on Instagram, which is where I saw it. I'll see if I can find a link for that and put it with our class notes as well. So thanks for joining us. I super appreciate you. And everybody, have a wonderful day.
Bye. Thanks for coming. I think
So
they
my
had to be here.
you were awesome. My husband just
I could
texted me.
I
Huh?
talk so much. Sorry. I'm like I get so into it and I just like
No, it's awesome. The bad news is my husband texted me just now and I need to take the dogs out.
perfect.